All right, so I guess we're actually live. I thought I was been live for the last 6 hours, but it's probably best I wasn't. I think it actually was meant to be. So I'd like to welcome everyone who comes to this. Is the first video about the family farm for Revit. And the idea is very challenging to work on families all by yourself. But to start off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a quick little prayer. God, please be with us. And please be with anyone who's watching or joins us. But most importantly, be with anyone who's not watching because they're really going to need your help because of the frustration that happens when you're dealing with families all by yourself. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So when it comes to working with families, it's a pretty rough ordeal. Um, what we're going to try to cover this week is all of our different things that I understand about families, and hopefully other people who are going to join later this week that I've made invitations to. Or if you drop a chat, I'd love to invite you. But the idea is we need to learn a little bit more about families. So, what I created was a file. Was it number two? No, I think number two I was opening in the other Revit. All right. And all this file is doing is when we look at building families. Now, there's several categories of families, but what we're going to be talking about is just 3D families. But don't get me wrong, the 2D families are some of the most valuable families in Revit. So I'm going to just touch on both of those. So I've only created two families in this project, or the two major types of families, 2D and 3D. First, we're going to talk about the 3D. So down here along this bottom row, from here all the way down to here, what we would find is if I selected on the family, this is a family window. This is a family telephone device. Now understand, I'm working in Revit 2020, and they have added some more of these. But what we want to understand, what I did was I went and made a simple family. This is the actual family. I double clicked on it to edit it. Okay. So this is where I could make an adjustment to this. And you'll see when I push it back in, it'll make this adjustment to it. But inside here, we have the ability to check all of these different types of families. Okay. Ironically, we even have some like watch this one here. Oh, I want to change it to a mass. Oh, no, you can't do that. That's prohibited. So why give us the selection? Well, because that's how weak Revit really is when it is in families. Okay. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people. It is so complicated that it's hard to understand what does work and what doesn't work. So I want this class to basically be, let's just get a rough understanding of number one, there's a lot of different kinds of families, right? These are all these 3D families. We have all these other ones. You probably can't. There's another one you probably can't do other than massing. Nope, doesn't look like it. I forget which one it was. There was another one that I thought you couldn't do. But every 3D family can be made into one of those families. Now, what a lot of people miss when you got that idea, that's all those categories. There are new ones in the new Revit. Matter of fact, we could actually take a look at that. But I want to talk about the other type of family. Okay. When you go to a new family, these you would think are all the different types of families, templates that are available. But really, you're going to find that these right here, and I skipped the adaptive one. I just have, that's great if you're trying to do fancy stuff with 3D, but if you're just trying to get real work done, everything from ceiling base down to model, these are the real different types of families because this is the seed file that you start from. So you got to understand The first important thing is it a ceiling base, face base, floor base, line base? For a long time, anybody who knew me would say, never use a face base or Brian's going to beat you up. Well, using a face based in a family as a subfamily is a lot different than using a face based in the project. And hopefully that's something you'll stick around to end up seeing the big difference. But what I've done at this point, just to show you the randomness that you wouldn't think, I'm going to load this back into the project, right? One of these guys should get a little bit shorter than the rest. Oh, look, there he was. See, that's how easy it is to edit a family. So it's not really difficult to go fix these families. These are great as placeholders. What people don't understand is if you have bad geometry or bad information in there, or if it doesn't match the submittal, it's important to try to update those families to get your model updated. But I'll let you in on a secret. No one can ever get to them all. So it's just sort of slips and people don't say anything about it. But typically on most jobs, a lot of the custom families, they don't really match the submittal. And there's been no verification to the latest submittal. So people are making a lot of bold assumptions, but at least you understand what that object is so that intelligent people can be in that BIM meeting and say, I recognize that object. So the key to making these Revit families is making them something you recognize. But what I wanted to show you this difference is if we go to this east elevation, I'm going to do something pretty cool here, and that is this is all those different families. Okay, right down here. Now, you'll see it ends at Windows. I started with the alphabetical and I went right down the row. So you say, why in the world would you do that? Well, the reason I did that is one time I said to myself, there was a family I was using one time and I thought I was crazy. Yeah. And I was like, I swear I could rotate that thing. But I didn't know what category it was, and I didn't realize the category would make a difference. So you'll notice that when I do this copy, you'll find out that, look, structural foundations. What error is it giving me? It told me there was two of those at the same place because the structural foundations is going to go to a level line. It can't be free of the level lines like this one right here. Okay, so what happens is I ended up finding out that if I went in there and I rotated, even if it's just a slight amount, you're going to see, oh no, 28 of those 35 objects can't be rotated. Oh, but some of those families could get rotated. So you'll see this next line here is my families that can be rotated. Air terminals, cable tray fittings, conduit fittings, accessories fittings. See what they have in common? Accessories fittings, mechanical equipment, that threw me for a loop. Accessories fittings, and sprinklers, that threw me for a loop. So I'm not really sure, but some of those objects can be rotated and some of them can't. Now, the amazing thing is, if we go into this family, right? And we go to, where do we go? To the properties of it, the category and parameters. What does this say right here? Always vertical. So is it really always vertical or is it not always vertical? Okay, that thing shouldn't have rotated, but it did. Now, what we need to learn is how to leverage this. And I promise that this is going somewhere. Okay, so just as important as being able to see if it could be rotated, there's another very important thing, and that is which objects can be joined. So you'll find that it was only by me creating all these different families that I could come up to the join command, and I was like, oh no, I can't join any family. Oh, wait a second, I can join that one. And you'll notice that that matches the one up here. So if you want to know what objects you can, family categories, you can actually join both in a project or in another Revit family, because that's where we're going to be talking about. And it'll be real interesting because on Thursday, there's going to be a 1 hour or probably about an hour seminar of other people talking about families. And I'm hoping as a group, we could at least watch that one together so that we could sort of have some feedback and say, wow, this is the, because from what I understand is this company just joined with another one and they're the largest company reseller of Autodesk or support or whatever the heck that is. But what I'd like to know is if they even know this information. So, that's sort of funny. I hate to get sidetracked this early, but I just have to. Because these days, what do we do? I know what I would do. Ask me anything. What family categories can be joined in Revit? In Autodesk, families are grouped into family categories. Only certain can be joined. Yeah. Okay. Do you see columns? Okay. Now, what they're talking about is system families, and that is true of system families. So maybe I needed to refine that down and say what independent families, but I see structural columns, but I don't see regular columns. Okay. See, I just showed you that we were talking about structural framing, foundation, connections, structural columns, and regular family columns. Those are the only ones that can really be joined. That's not what it's telling us there. See, here it's saying that some things it knows can't be joined, but I don't think anyone really has a solid understanding of what can be joined. Now, that's where I got to my next problem. My next problem was, and I think that might have been the one I saved as 2. Let's see if it is, just so we can jump right to it. All right. So, do you ever have this problem where you don't know which folder you're in? My recommendation is all I do is I do a save as family or save as project or family if you're in a family. You just go to that location and then you just hit your save. And what will happen is now when I go to the open, it's going to fail to find it. That's fine. But you will find that now when I go to try to open it, I should be in that folder. Maybe it didn't like that fact that I couldn't save it. How about we do this? How about we save as, and we'll name this guy 3. Now I bet we can open up 2. You'll see that when I go to open, no, right there. It's because it's trying to open both types, not just projects. That's my bad. Nope, this one didn't have it either. I didn't save the changes. Or was I doing that in here? There's a slight chance. Nope. Just so you have an idea for what we're about to do, you can see the families that I've built. Okay. Just to give you an idea of the count that we've built in a small time frame and what I need help building. And so where there's a lot there, I'm probably about 5% of the way through the catalog. So I drastically need some help to draw all these families. But in the process, I'm willing to teach you how to make a smarter family. So you can learn why you earn is what my thought process is. But at any rate, I'm going to go back to that 2020, and I'll just repeat the process that I did earlier, because you find that that's the only way you really get good at Revit, is to repeat things over and over. So what I'm going to show you is a little idea I had for a bunch of the equipment that I've got to build. A lot of it's perforated panels. But we all know if you start poking a bunch of holes in these families, oh my gosh, they're going to balloon in size. Okay, so I haven't. I'm close on something that is making my files a little bit large, and we'll be looking at that later on. But what I want to show you is I'm just going to take this perforated panel, and I'm going to have this neat little guy that automatically can go into any face and put the perforations on it. Now the idea is this guy's probably a little bit smaller, like 1 foot by 1 foot, which is going to look a little bit unrealistic. Oh, yeah, more unrealistic than I thought. How about we do this? How about we take that guy out and try it with my perforated panel number 1, which is a single perforated panel. Okay, so you see what happened there is this family is one of these face-based families, and it works great for me, but only sometimes. And that's when I said, huh, does it work differently in different in different family categories? Look at that. Can you see what it did? See, it doesn't cut a hole in these objects, but in the objects it's supposed to be working, it should cut a hole in it. And then I said, you doggone it, are you kidding me? Revit, only some families get cut by a face-based family. We're going to ask Chad about it and see what he has to say. But what I found is this is exactly true. And I actually went through it earlier. See, neither one of those are working. Let's see. You'll see a dark one. Nope, that's not it either. It gives you an optical illusion, but I went right down this list. Now I know you see those two. I know you can see the inside guts of that. Then you can see that it cut it. But you see, you go crazy thinking, I swear this worked the other day. And it is the most frustrating thing as you're starting to build more sophisticated families, not understanding what effects those families have. Can they be cut? So like I said, see now you're not getting deceived anymore. You should be seeing that on the screen, which ones are good and which ones are bad, right? See, all I did was I went right down this doggone list. This is all the different kinds of families that it could be, okay? Because I actually created one. They're all the same. They end up being the same size. They don't end up having any parameters on. This is just a study to learn what I didn't know before, which is which families can I cut? Now, I'll give you, this turns into a really neat experiment. We just go over to the east side. And what we do is we take all of that stuff. Oh, wait, I missed one step. First, we want to copy up a level. So a second ago, I told you some nonsense about that structural foundation. That's because if you're not careful, you will like, why does that one work differently? Because it does work different than all the rest. But here, what you're going to see is I'm going to say, can be cut. And I'm going to then take that whole row at the bottom with the tags. Okay, you're going to notice that this time when I copy this up, no problem with the structural because it had a level line that it found to be associated with. It is that intelligent, but only that one. Rest of the families, you don't get that luck. So now all I do is go to my 3D, and you'll see there's a whole nother second row up there, and all I have to do is just go like this. Which ones do not cut? See, and what you're going to learn here is a little game I play where I let Revit sort of help me figure things out. Okay, most people wouldn't look at Revit and say, how can I answer these questions? Because I'll be honest with you, it hurt to get to this point right here to actually think about these things in this level. And I've asked people over the years, this isn't a brand new question. This is a question I might have been asking 10 years ago, is which families can be cut and which families can be joined? And I never could figure it out. I could never get a good solid answer. And we're going to be interested to see if ChatGPT comes up with a matching list, right? So if we delete that, what we end up with, now that is a very unfortunate thing that I do not like about these faith-based families. This I didn't understand going into the first 2 days of building those tables. And that's the unfortunate part. But faith-based families, if you delete the object, this thing just becomes unassociated. Okay? And that's something that is it doesn't delete with the face. Now, a wall-based family, you delete the wall, the family goes away. Ceiling-based family, you delete the ceiling object goes away. So those work a little bit different. It took me years before I realized that solution. But now what you'd find is if I went to my east elevation, right here's the list. Specialty equipment, furniture systems, 3 structurals, a generic model, and a casework. Now, notice how that list isn't like any of the other lists. These ones can be rotated, these ones can be joined, and these ones can be cut. Help me. This is where I say I need his blessings to even give me half a chance to try to get through this problem. But you see the problem, okay? Now, why do those become so important? Because those are how most of my furniture is built now, okay? Because what I was doing, let's go look at some of these images, okay? So these are the things we got to build. Now, we want to try to make this thing parametric, number one. You want to try to keep it light. But most importantly, if you go cutting all of these little holes as a subtraction, as some other method, it's not going to end well for you. Now, on top of that, what you can even see is they really want to be drawing these legs, which look, these ones might actually be round, but you're going to find that as we flip through, so, you know what? No, these are the tables. They have put that fine radius on there, okay? So I have included the radius, but the perforated panels, how else was I going to handle the perforated panels? So what you'll find out is these perforated panels are used with a little bit of trickery, okay? If I go back to this 3D, what you're going to see is you got to keep in mind that that is not a very big object. But you'll notice that if you're at a greater scale, if you're at a greater scale, they last a little bit longer. But if you're zoomed in, you can see those are a 3/8 scale. Okay. Now, what I had covered earlier is this was extremely frustrating creating this pattern because I was trying to create the smallest pattern that Revit could make. And I spent, a matter of fact, I did a stream on it explaining my conversation with chat about how small was the smallest line I could have in a pattern. So in other words, when I bring a pattern in, a model pattern in, and I shrink it down to the point that one of the shortest lines in that pattern, if this is a wood pattern, it's going to be the smallest little line segment. It can only be at 3/8 of an inch. And then it starts to fail. But now this is the interesting part. When it starts to fail, that can never be fixed. You've now messed up that pattern in your file, and they know about it. And they've known about it for years. If you poke and prod ChatGPT, he finally comes back and says, oh yeah, that was a silent limitation. And I asked chat, is it silent because you won't talk about it? So let's see if we bumped into a couple other silent limitations. So I just go to my east view. Like I said, here you can sort of see it on the screen. Let's see. You should be able to read that. Furniture, you see what we're listing. Let's see what chat has to say. Ask me anything, you say. What kind of Revit families can be cut with a face-based family? Let's see if it even gets close. No, a face-based is not a wall. Those are walls. We're talking only face-based. Okay, it seems to have given us some answers. Walls, floors, ceilings, roofs, generic models. I do, if in place or loadable. And it depends on the geometry. I don't see anything in here about furniture. No. A matter of fact, it says right here, these categories cannot be cut by face-based voids. Oh, furniture. The one that we can actually do it to. See, I'm not trying to totally embarrass chat. Matter of fact, I'm hoping that chat will start to listen to me if nobody else will. Maybe he can make this information. He said he can make these videos and dice these up into small little templates. Maybe this is a way that he can help in this problem. Either way, I will tell you, it's a very, very, very lonely place when you try to build that first view that I showed you of all those families. Okay, nah, that ain't it. I'm gonna get rid of that one. This one here is the one I'd like to save because you see, I can now run other future experiments with this, but I would say it definitely missed casework. It did hit generic models, but it didn't say the columns, didn't say any of the structural, surely didn't say any. As a matter of fact, it said you couldn't do furniture. More importantly, it said specialty equipment. And that's the only way I stumbled into this. Because what I'm trying to explain to you, let's see, it might be my other one that's open. Let's see. Actually, that's where I went wrong. I've got it opened in two different views. Let's close this one. Sure. I don't think we need that one. Because this is going to be beneficial for you to at least see how long does this take to open. So let me go back here, try to explain. I had to look through these things multiple times to decide how we're going to build them. And what I've deciphered to this point is basically the cart and how to make that cart so that you could, because you see, what they really want to do is they want to import STP files. That's how I got referred to this. But I don't think STP files are the way to go. I think that you're left with a lot more option if you make those things as parametric real families. And if you're a real Revit believer and you drink the Revit Kool-Aid, then I know that you would agree with me that that's what you typically want to do because of the effects of it on your file. Okay, so you got to understand. My first problem was these perforations. And I tried to figure out a rhyme or rhythm to the perforations. And then the other thing that I focused on was the caster. Okay, so what I've created to this point is essentially Let's see. Not that one. It's called library. It's up one right there. No. All right, bear with me. No, that's the other one. It was updated families. That's where it's at. Library new. And then I decided I was going to be breaking these. I thought I was going to put all these families in one file. I'm going to have one file that is all of the tables. Now, what you're going to understand is I flipped through all their tables and I have built the most common and the simplest of the tables and at least the backbones. Okay. So you're going to find that if you go to one of these families, and I was to pick on one of them, like this one right here it says it's missing a computer and probably a keyboard. So there's a little bit more information to go on this guy. But what you would find is here is all of these. And my question is, does that material sell as perforated material? And I think it does. Now, there's a lot of strength in the families that I've created. So this one should, yep, right down here is my standard types. So what you would find is if I took any cart, see the difference between those two carts, one that's got a center support and one that doesn't. If I took either one of those and I decided I wanted feet levelers on there, that's all I'd have to do to turn the feet levelers on. Okay. If it's another option to have the feet, you'll notice that this incorporates having the 2 feet, which you know what? That is a little weird on that one. Where those feet would go, I think I was actually sort of copying what they had drawn in their models.
You're right, though, because when you push it in the corner, they will be sticking out like that.
Well, at any rate, it also has the ability, and we can get that input. That's where we need it. So it doesn't matter. We can modify those families and update this. But the other is if it's got the adjustable feet on all 4. So if you didn't catch that, see here's with stationary feet, fixed feet, because and this isn't something I invented. This is something that you got to remember came from here. I'm looking at the feet, looking at the feet, looking at the feet. Now, you'll notice those first couple those were probably older models, but here is the typical feet that they have, which is this is the bolt down leveling feet, which I included in most of my families. Okay. But you'll notice they use different kind of levelers. You can almost tell as the years went on, but for the most part, they were using these guys right here. So that's what I made all of my feet to. But remember, when they were making their first product line, some of the first things they were creating, they had different feet drawn. And what it seems like the number up here, the older that number is, the older the file is. If that makes sense. So it's like as this number gets better, you'll actually see a progression and you'll see their families getting better, their drawings getting better. I experienced the same thing. It wouldn't surprise me. What we're trying to get at is these tables. What I tried to represent was you should hopefully now see some wheels coming. Let's see. There's some wheels. So this is when you start seeing the wheels come on, and this is where they tell you about them being locking casters. Understand, there's like this many more tables coming up. A bunch. Okay? So I tried to mimic the wheels from what I saw in the end point. One of the table types that I have skipped is this one because I need to build a very special family at the corners to make it be this adjustable. And I think that's going to be a neat one to make, but I tried to get the easiest ones done. If it was fixed, this one here, I promise you, this one's all done. The only thing it needs is it needs this rail stamped on the top because I haven't built the rail yet. That's what we're going to do this week. Because how do we build that rail? Just as a generic model? as a generic model line-based, generic model face-based, generic model. Which one of those do you want to build it as? That's the problem you're going to struggle with when you try to look into building these subcomponents, because no one's ever really discussed it. Okay? What you're going to end up finding out that once I got going, one of the things that I found out was there was all different ways that they had put these perforated panels. I like to refer to this one as my 2V, okay? So what you'd find is I have one of these sub panels that's called a 2V. That's what's in there right now. But let's say I wanted it to be the 4 pattern. All I have to do is I just go to the 4 pattern and I rename it without the 4. Oh, I have one already. That's why we'll put an X after that one. I'll have to figure out which one that one is. But now I could make this the same name. And the benefit is when I drag and drop it, this is where I was trying to tell you earlier. When we drag that perforated panel into the project, I just got to start placing it. That's not what's going to happen here. What's going to happen here is it's going to open it, and then I need to load it into my table template. When I do, it's going to say, do you want to overwrite? And that's where the magic happens. That's where I get my 4 top instead of my 2 top, or my 1 top, or whatever division that I need in order to make that happen. So that's the first thing that I can do simply by looking at this image is say, oh, I got the wrong perforated panel. Okay. The next things that I can do once I've done that, and this is where the real amazing thing happens, okay, is, do we want to check it here? Yeah, I guess we could check it here. You have the ability, okay? I've taken time to put a lot of parameters behind analysis results because it's typically folded up. What happens is you're going to find that that's all my ones where I'm doing calculations. So I've tried to be nice to you. And the only parameters you see are the ones you can change. So you can change this guy's material. You can change his size, depth. You can change the fillet radius, the foot height, and the structure size. Now, why did I think that was important? Well, because I thought that it might be beneficial. And watch, we're going to do this in the actual project. So we're going to load this guy back into the library template new. We should see him update. Ready? He should get 4 grids instead of 2. Oh, there he was right there. That guy right there. So what is the benefit? Well, I can take this family, and if I copy it down and say edit type and say duplicate, I'm not even going to number it, but you see what it is, DDHLLHH. That stands for these numbers right here. And that's where it's going to say it's a 30 by 48 by 24. And what's happened is now that table's become that new size automatically. Now, I wanted to give it a little bit more power than that. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I wanted to give it a little bit more power than that because I noticed that sometimes they were using a different framing member size. So you're going to see that, watch, this time we're going to go to edit type. We're going to duplicate. And we're going to say, see this structure size? They're not using 1.5-inch tubing. This is going to be 2-inch tubing. So now you can see that we've got the one with the beefier tubing, made the shelf get thicker, all the legs grew, everything snapped into place. How far could I go with that? And that's where it's pretty neat because you can actually go, you know what? We need to use 4-inch tube steel because if we're putting something heavy on those tables, right? Well, the next thing that you'd probably want to do, and it is going to have a little bit of a problem because that is so extreme, but you understand what it just did. It made everything 4-inch. Now, the interesting thing is, I had actually intended for these boxes all to grow. Let's see why they didn't grow. Well, if I go into that family, what you're going to find is this subfamily. I have the depth and the length equaling something in the project, equaling the depth and the length. But you see my edge offset? I didn't have it match the structure size. Had it matched the structure size, what we would end up seeing is that everything in that thing should have remained 4 inches. Okay? That's pretty beneficial if you think about the level of impact there. Will tell you I got a little bit of a size problem because of the fact that I can scale the feet. See, because in my mind, when I look at these 4 objects right here, I'd say, oh, you know what? This one here, and I told you the base is going to go bad on us. But this guy here, what I really would like to do, and you'll notice that we have everything listed. But when I come to here, no, actually, so this would be a bad place for you to fill anything in analysis results. But you would see right here, my foot height, if I wanted to make my foot bigger, I could make it 1¼ times bigger. And now the foot would get bigger for the big one. I could come in here for my thin one, and I could make it be 0.5, and that foot's going to be half the size. Okay? So that cost me a lot of size. But the rest of the stuff is some really powerful stuff at how it's done, because it's not how you would typically think about building a family. Okay? What we're going to be looking at is the biggest thing is trying to make one solid. So if we go look at that table, what you're going to find is I have one solid object up top, right? He's just an extrusion. That's where everything starts. That's basically like the main part of your object. And then what we do is we're going to hit that thing with a lot of different face-based families. So you see the one for the perforated edge, right? It cuts a hole and fills it back in with another object with material. Trust me, I had played with the idea of splitting that face and painting that face. This worked so much better. Now, where I really like the effects of it is something a little bit crazy, and I don't know if anyone can pick it up out there. Let's see if we can. Do we have line weights on? All right. Can you pick up the fact that this tube steel, which is an object that's extruded with a radius on it, do you see how it's losing this line? When I turn this into a hidden line, you'll actually see that line completely disappears. So I did something that I thought in all my years of Revit, more than a decade, could I fill it an edge and have the line be left? And guess what? I promise you, most people would not think that could be done. Now, here's the problem. Actually, let me show it to you the way I did with the fella today. Okay? That's by going into this one. And by learning this problem, we all agree, right? We can see those lines. We did it actually like this. So we can actually see this happen. We're going to leave the lines on the top. We're going to get rid of the ones on the bottom just by simply doing an extrusion. See how it's now hitting that table, hitting that bottom leg? If I simply join this and this, where'd they go? Look at the ones up above. Look at the ones down below. Where'd they go?
Yeah, look at that.
Well, where they went is if it gets joined, Now, I found this out by the more unfortunate method. I wanted to cut another hole in that thing, and I just decided, oh, I'll just do a little extrusion, void cut, like I've always done all my life. Well, if I do that, same thing. And that's when I wanted to cry. That's when I was like, oh, wow, I'm really bummed because that's what I wanted to do was make an extrusion. But you know what? The truth was, I didn't want to make an extrusion. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to put a hole for the trash up in the top. That's all I wanted to do. So I figured I would do that the simple way. But I forgot what I had just learned. And that was what I really wanted to do was put a round hole. Help me find it. Look right there, round hole. Now, once again, this is where it's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, Revit. I can't drop a family into a family. It's going to open that family. I'm just going to say continue to open. I don't really care about saving it. And then I'm going to push it. Now, this is the problem with subfamilies. If you're not careful every time you do this loading projects, you will push this family into other families and not have any clue what is going on. I was pushing this one into the template with a shelf. Okay. Just so happen to know that name. Now watch what happens. Oh, it's not a hard thing. Matter of fact, crazy stuff can happen. You can actually find, you can cut holes in the side of objects. So this hole here, if I went to it and I said duplicate, and I said, yeah, well, that was good, but I only wanted that to be a 2-inch or a 1-inch. See? And you wouldn't typically think, hey, I could just put these guys in. Well, then let me ask you a question. Now, be careful with this. Okay. Remember, I'm doing all this in 3D. So be careful with this, but you would not believe that you can come in here and do an array, pick your first spot. You notice it says, oh, you can't do that. Don't do that. Can't do that. I don't know why it's lying to me, but I'm pretty sure I can do this. And I could say that I wanted 3 of those. Notice how it's poking those holes in there? So if you do that, then you know all I have to do is slide this guy down and the other one slide just as close. Nope, that was the one that I slid off the face. So that would be one where what I would typically do is I'd pick this and I'd go to the front view, zoom out a little bit, and I would just and then I might even double check to make sure they're all down, and they're all down a little bit. But now you see I could put in 15 of those. Now, I'll let you know how that ends up turning out, whether or not it'll really work. But you have to understand that in order for me to be able to put these holes in these objects, what is this object? This object can be a solid. What does that mean? That means one of these 3 up here, right? Any of those things I can cut. But if that object, okay, what if it's not a solid? Well, what if it's another family? So if you ever have these array groups, you can always tab into the array group and then do your create similar. But what I'm basically asking you is, what happens if I try to put a hole in that leg and a hole in this leg? Didn't work out too good. That's a bummer. Why didn't it work out too good? All right. Because this was not one of the acceptable options. Does anybody remember what they were? They were furniture systems, right? That's why I created that list. No, not columns. Columns can't be cut. Columns can be joined, but they can't be cut. Come on, Autodesk, help us out. Thank you. Good feedback. I appreciate your. No, accessories? Not the fittings and accessories. Those could be rotated, not cut. See, that's why it's so doggone hard to really do this. So if I'm correct, and I change that to furniture, and I then load that in to the same family that I was just doing my loading, right? Well, look up here. Let's look because you're going to see something. Watch. Look, no, not that one. Up here, oh, there's one of them holes. Those holes were there. It actually put them in. They just didn't do anything. But watch what happens when I put them in now, right? Just to prove I'm not pulling a fast one, I'm going to go into that family and I'm going to say create similar. Now that it's of that other category, it can be cut.
Wow.
Talk about frustrating. Okay. So if I have the ability to put some of these simple cuts in here, you're going to find out as I go through this guy's catalog, there's going to be a lot of repetition that builds right off of that. I can tell you, I never would have dreamed I could build all of those tables in that amount of time frame. Now, I worked very diligently, but I've never been up to 10 families an hour. 10 families an hour, you're really cooking, you're really focused. You don't want to be in that position and trying to make a living at that. So that's where the real challenge comes in. So we're going to see how that ends up playing out. Maybe we work that in another way, but I'm hoping that you'll join me this week so that we can go through what it's going to take to build this catalog. Okay? You'll see, like I said, this one here, I've got it built. Everything built took me like 4 minutes to do. And all I got to now do is come up with the sliding keyboard tray. Okay. When we get back to the very front, this one here, mostly built, just needs a terminal and a keyboard tray. The reason I'm talking about that is if you join me this week, that's what I'd like to be able to try to do and try to create is those extra little objects because I would love some assistance with those. And I'd love to show you how we model those simple things and we don't waste all day on them. Now, granted, we will waste all day on a lot of things. But this table here, it was absolutely the only thing that I would probably recommend is I could make this lower shelf height adjustable and then I wouldn't have to make a different type family. It could all be in the one type. I do not have a parameter for the lower frame height or lower, but I very easily could and probably should, to be quite honest with you. This one here, you're going to notice it's just that same table. It just needs those drawers snapped into it. So if you can see anything, I'm hoping you're going to see that one of the things we got to do this week is make this casework. And I know I didn't classify it as casework, classified it as specialty equipment. I still think it's supposed to be specialty equipment, but how these work is exactly how most of the most sophisticated casework people are making them without short of writing those automatic programs. I know there's a lot of great stuff out there, but the idea is that most of those are made for putting casework in a project. We're trying to put casework in a family. And if that sounds weird to you, it should, because no one's been prepared for it. Because people, you know what else is not made for a family? Putting pipe in a family. Okay? A matter of fact, you would think, and this is where I made the mistake, you would think, hey, Brian, Revit already created a bunch of structural. And that was the route I went first, and it ended terribly for me. Okay? Because that structural, the tube steel and things like that, which is actually what this was made from, that was where my initial idea was. But you'll find that those structural families aren't real strong inside of other families, and some of the functionality is lost as well. So what I have to do is I had to create all new type of structural. And I'm going to show you the benefit. I also made pipe, and we're going to make pipe fittings. These are not the kind of pipe fittings that work in a project. They only work in a family. And when you see how they work, you're going to be like, wow, that's crazy. So I hope you stick around because we have a lot of stuff that we have to create, but a lot of it's going to not be created the way you would think. It's going to be created using these little subparts. See, that's when I started adding that hole. Now, I'll be honest, that hole's going to get better than just a hole. It's going to end up with a piece of liner protection around it, and we're going to end up using it a bunch in one of the other categories. But the part that's so hard to understand is I had to try to digest all of these. All right. And you'll see that I have probably 90, 95% of these built. This one here, I haven't figured out how to do this front edge, these legs out here. That was something that I needed to do. I need to do when I'm nice and fresh. So maybe that's something we'll probably cover around lunchtime or after I eat tomorrow. But it's one of the few that I did not hit as of yet. Most of these are all built. This one here, guess what it says, sadly enough? It needs rails and it needs the keyboard tray. But all the rest of the functionality is there and built. And you know that we should just be able to make a simple keyboard tray and snap that fella in. And I want to try to learn how to do that control. Okay. But my thought process is I started all over, and I think that the next because I went, it was bone crushing. I'm telling you, 10 of these an hour, you're clicking like crazy. But what I was trying to do was to get all the backbones. So now I could see every one of these and see, oh yeah, I need to build this vacuum wand thing. See this vacuum wand thing? It has a little pipe that goes under here and goes back there. We need to be able to snap that on a lot of theirs. And it needs to be adjustable by the depth of the thing. Because one is strapped to the front leg, one's strapped to the back leg. You can sort of see it down here. Okay. So the idea is to skip over all those details and to get the base bones built for as much stuff as I can. That's my attack. See, here's another one with that same vacuum rail and the rails on top. But once I solve that problem, now there are a couple that are more complicated, like this one, that I'll be honest with you, I thought it was super complicated. But now that I understand how some of this stuff works, I'm not near as scared because those beams, those structural members, they are line-based families. And once you learn how they work, you will be a changed person, which we will cover. We will get into. Now, these are some little mounts, but you can see we're nowhere close. There's tables on top of tables, on top of tables, on top of tables. Now, if what someone's poor exercise is to take all of these step files and make these into Revit families, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the lack of fun that would be just waiting for all that translation. And it's abhorrent that someone from Autodesk would even suggest that that's a viable idea. That's just a bad idea. You're talking about so many exports we're going to look at, and we've reviewed a little bit before. Okay, see, this is where in 2026 I was pushing some tests on my families, see how they worked. I wanted to make sure that those fillet lines were still there. And notice if we take this thing out of this 3D and go to hidden line, you see how my tabletops don't lose their extra lines? Now you can see the columns below, they do. And a matter of fact, my wife asked earlier, and I tried to say, well, notice how they look when you're in shaded. That's the benefit of the method of putting these fillets on, which is, it seems a little bit awkward. And typically I would not fillet anything that was smaller than a 1/4 inch. But you would find that, believe it or not, we'll test this. This is the first time I've ever tested this. But I bet I can take that fillet radius down to an 1/8 inch. I wouldn't recommend it, but you would find that it would still keep those two lines. How far can you actually go? I don't know. Sixteenth of an inch.
Can I mention something
Tell me.
that I found? I was looking up boys because I'm trying to figure out the size of the families because our families are high.
Yeah.
And it said that boys do make a family larger, but it did say um, that you could limit the use of the voids and go ahead. It said create specialized void families. When voids are needed to cut different element categories, consider creating a generic model void family with the cut with voids when loaded option enabled.
That doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't. Okay.
I tested all those.
Okay.
So very good, valid point. Let's see if we still have that up. We still have that up. All right. So, and that's why it's actually beneficial to do this together. So her theory was, if I went in here, let's see, it should remember that last component. Was I placing that component? Sure. Right? So you say, oh, that's not cutting it. So your thinking is, I know, I'll go into this family and I'll come down here and say cut with voids when loaded. I like the idea.
Is that a generic model?
Nope.
Use the generic model.
It's still a cable tray.
Okay, well, he's saying use a generic model.
Yeah, but I'm saying I told you exactly which ones you can use.
Yeah, you're right.
And you shouldn't be using everything for generic models.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? So let's see if it worked. You'll notice it got lower, but it didn't allow it to cut. Okay? That doesn't affect how a face-based cutting object. And what you just don't have any idea is how valuable that face-based cutting object was. Because I'm hoping that you saw from what I created that that's what most of this stuff is. Right? That's how I'm not using a whole lot, and that's not what caused the size to go up.
Yeah. Yeah, because you already itemized each piece of that and looked at that.
No, it's the feet. It's the feet. That's the feet but those feet are so doggone powerful now. You can't see them in that one. You have to go back to this guy. And I think I was actually showing you how those feet worked. But these here are line-based families. What is a line-based family? Well, the first thing that I learned about a line-based family that was crazy, blew my brain. And remember, I'm in a 3D view. So this is a dangerous spot to be drawing in. I guess it will only let me draw down on the floor, which I don't mind. Okay? What a line-based family does, that you would not expect. First of all, those are actually lines. What do I mean lines? That means I can trim them together. Oh. All right, so if I put a little bit of an offset on these things, see this offset right here? What if I change that to 0 and that to 0? Oh, look at that. They all joined and but that's no good, Brian, because really you want this one and this one. What? Oh, you want those to both be offset on their end by 1.5 so they can be welded together, so they can be a simple piece of framing. See, because like I said, this is something that we have to build all the time in Revit. You have to build the skid, you have to build some kind of framing, and we don't have any framing members. So what I was trying to create was a smarter framing member. And a matter of fact, I think just around tonight off, before I kick off for dinner, I'm going to show you the benefit of that filleted one versus the one we're using. Okay? And then I'm going to try to see what the size impact is and whether it's a problem or not. I don't think it will be. But what you don't understand when you're building these line-based families, watch this. If I lock this down, right? If I put a parameter on this, notice what happens to the other two objects. Notice what happens to the other two objects. You see that? So all I have to lock down is the 4 lines, and everything else will follow its way through. Okay? That's essentially how I built these. Now you'll notice those 2 end offsets I was just talking about being 1.5 inches. You'll see that what I actually did was the one end offset, I wanted it to be what? Related to my shelf thickness, which I've now called structure size. Okay, just so it wasn't confused. But that the idea being this offset, if I change that thickness, if I change that parameter, all this stuff grows. This needs to cut back. This cut needs to get bigger. All of that ends up happening. Okay. But it's not happening the way you typically would think, because you would think in here, I would have all kinds of formulas and all kinds of crazy stuff. But remember, we're trying to keep these families so that a user wants to use them. And I can tell you from my experience that what a person wants to do when they're in here and they get this table here and they start looking at the submittal data and they say, oh, damn it, you guys are totally wrong. That's not what we got. We got the 66 by 80 by 36. They want to be able to plug in the right size and have it go to the right size and grow and be that size. Now, obviously, with that kind of extreme, you would want to be using a different template file that had more center support structure. But let's go more realistic, because this is how I was thinking about filling it in. 3 of the parameters that I added are nothing more than an integer. And what it allows me to do, it allows me to go right there and type numbers and arrows and watch what I can do. I can make this a 24 by 36 by 32 and hit enter, enter, and it's done. Okay. Now their idea is for you to go load that family and pick that from a catalog. So what do I mean when I say that? Huh? Might as well explain that one, because that's deep. All right. Let's see where we've got that text file. No, that was the new one. Boy, I hope I didn't blow that text file. You know what? It'd probably be better me actually recreating that text file and explain that to you. That would make more sense. So what am I talking about this text file? What am I talking about this family category? So what happens is this family right here, if you make this family with all of these different types, you can actually see Revit sort of letting you know, hey, yeah, that really doesn't sort of work. You might want to stay away from that. That's usually what that yellow hourglass is telling me. But after a little bit of patience, you can watch and you'll see it has all of these different types already built into it. That's not the way you want to do this. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to take that guy. Let me go ahead and note there's nothing left to close. All right. So you take him and you open him. Beautiful. While I'm doing that, I'm going to create a folder called Catalog Test. I think I misspelled it, but I don't really care. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you create this catalog. What you do is you say File. You come down here to Export, I believe it is, and you create this family type. Exports family types from current family to a TXT file. That sounds fun. Let's try that. So what it's going to do is I'm going to put this in the right location so we can find it. This is the catalog test. Okay. And I'll put these files up in that Google Drive by the end of the night. But we're going to save it in there. And that created a little text file. Now the magic happens here. And that magic is when I come into this Revit file and I file save as family into that same folder. Okay, catalog test. Say save. Now, what you're going to see is something a little bit interesting. What you're going to see is that it took and it made that Revit family is 2 meg. Okay. Now, what we've got to understand is we could come in here and we could say, oh, goodness gracious, look what you did, Brian. You got all these families. What in the world am I going to do? And this is all you do. You would typically go, I could say delete, delete, right? Because I have all these different sizes already built. What you would be easier to say is, you're going to watch no mirrors or anything. I'm just going to go new. I'm going to go new project. I'm going to start. I typically start from an architectural, but you could do whatever you wanted.
Or just copy and paste it into a new project.
No, well, this one's a little bit tricky. This one's a little bit tricky. You have to take this guy here, right? This family that you can see. There's signs that something's wrong with it. Or maybe it's just me. You don't see that there is something wrong going on there?
Yeah.
A little bit like marshmallow. You feel you got it on you. You don't know where it came from, but it's sticky and it's bothering you. That's what seems to happen. That's what I call that. So what you're going to find is if we take and we load this into that new file, which would probably be named, I don't know, Project 1, right? Because I just created a brand new one. Let's hope that's it. Appears to be it. So you can sort of feel that maybe that's a bad idea having all those types in there. With me? That's where Revit's trying to tell you something's not good. What you'd find is if I came down here and I came down to specialty equipment, there's my table. Oh my gosh. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the first one in so I don't delete all of them. And then I'm going to take from that first one all the way down. Holy smokes. That was a lot of families to create. I think we were bragging that we created 151 families in under an hour. And it was a lot of work to do. All right. So now we just have that one family in there. Now, this is where you'll make your mistake every doggone time. You have to go close that family that you were just working in. Okay? That has to be closed, or when I double click on it, it's going to reopen it. And I'm not even going to save those changes. I'm that brave. Now, if I double click on it, oh, it's because that text file's in there. So it's still not exactly correct, but let's just see this through. There should only be one type. Instead of me hitting delete 151 times. Oh, look at that. So all I would be doing is renaming that to DDLLHH. Have any idea where I get that from? If you look right here, those are the numbers that I fill in. That's how they seem to designate all their equipment. That's why I did it that way. So what we've just done by doing that is we can, this guy here was the table. We don't want that table anymore. Oh, no. No. What we want to do is we want to save that table. And watch this. File, save as, family, and I'm going to call this guy No types. Okay? It's the one with just one type. Now, if we review the size, you're going to see that drastically reduce the size. Now, what happens is, in order to bring that family into your project, this is my project that has nothing in it. Just the one family in the corner. Wow. I don't know. I don't know. This is the part that concerns me about that type catalog is it just doesn't feel right. Things do not feel right after I've played with that. It's like I think it's worse than peanut butter. But the idea is here's my two types. If I take and I rename this one all types, come back here. The key is I can do it either way. See this one that says no types? I can simply take that name, and as long as I have a text file with a matching name into it, oh, you know what you have to do? I know what I'm going to have to do. All right, this is where it gets real frustrating. Is that text file becomes locked up because of its association with Revit. So you can't do that rename. But that doesn't mean I couldn't go copy, paste, take that guy, rename him. Oh, I lost my copy. Copy, paste. It'll allow me to do that. And then what I could do is I could say, now here's where the problem comes in. Let me go back to that doggone right there. Here's the problem. If we use a catalog, most users don't know how they work. Okay? Because most people simply take catalog. Oh, this guy, no types. Yeah, I just drag him and drop him in the file. Yeah, Brian, right? That's all I got to do. And then it works. It works real nice. Okay? But you're going to find that you got this guy up here. He just says DDLLHH. What the catalog is intending you to do is to go to a place where you can place components. Now that might be here on component, or that might be on systems on components. All right, there's a component for systems. That might be a plumbing fixture. It could be any one of those things. Might be that you picked on a family and you said create similar and then said load a family. Okay. Somehow or another, you got to get to this load family in order for your catalogs to work. First thing that happens to people is that's typically left in this scary ghost folder that's way at the end of who knows what. What I need to do is I need to change that to the place where that folder's being used, right? That was my catalog test, and it was right there. I'm not trying to pick on that name. Oh no, am I? Yeah, I am. I'm trying to pick on, see, if I pick on the top one, all of those types are already embedded in. But if I pick on the bottom one and I say, okay, this is what creating the text file did. Did you ever see one of those, like in a structural family? Some of the stuff that they created, you would see. Now, this brought way too much information in because it took every one of my parameters out. But you would find that here's all the different sizes. And the benefit is I can come down this list. I don't know that it's a benefit. I've never find this as an enjoyable thing. To me, a catalog seems like a great idea. That was far too intelligent for anyone to use, and now it's become stupid. But the idea is I can pick stuff off that catalog, say okay, and what you're going to find is now all of those sizes that I selected are available. Right? See how it brought those sizes in? That's where I'm going to end this night because the question that I have for you is a type catalog really worth it? I will tell you, it drastically affected this guy's size, and you don't want to have a bunch of extra families in your project. But got a little inside information. Most people who've got file bloat are typically going to hit this purge. And we're going to find that if we do a purge and just as a look to go look at the specialty equipment, you're going to see that all the styles that I imported, it's going to get rid of them then. Doesn't mean I shouldn't have put them in the first place. But I can promise you, we definitely don't want that other table that has all those sizes. Now, I've got some ideas, but I really want to talk with the people at Raytech on how I would fix this issue to make it so that it was a family that was more user friendly. And I think when you see that come about Thursday, you're going to be glad you spent some time this week learning about families. And I hope it takes you a long, long way. But for right now, it took me a long time to figure out that type catalog. And that type catalog is really neat, makes a lot of different styles. But you got to be real careful because I don't know that's what people want. And you're, as a manufacturer, trying to provide what people want. And we already reviewed in previous videos, but just for giggles, I'm going to take you back to the spot where I started, which is in this guy here. Is it that one? Yep.
I think that
this one here.
Type thing is good. I think the type thing, because then you know what sizes this thing can go to. If you let people plug in any number, they might plug in a number that thing's not built. So the types is good because that
most people are going to have a hard time downloading that file and getting that to work. Okay. And what they typically do is they typically name that first type that I had DDLLHH. Mm-hmm. They name that you did something wrong. You did not use it from the catalog. All kinds of different things. They try to give you a warning, but you don't want to be the person with egg on your face the day you realize that piece of equipment wasn't the right size. And what typically happens is someone down the line is going to be checking that against submittal data, and they're going to be able to say, oh, see this cabinet right here? I don't know why, but in the model, it's showing as 5 feet. But we looked, and it's really only 4 feet. Can you fix that? And then that's when a person's going to go into the file. And in here, he's going to say, oh, there's no parameters, and it's a step file. Oh, shit. I got to start from scratch. Okay? And that's where the problem comes in. So, also, as I said, there's so many little frustrating things with those step files. Really, really frustrating little things with those step files. You know, I think what I talked about earlier got lost, and that was I showed somebody how to write a filter. See, if we don't have that filter drawn, this is how step files look at a project. And even worse, when you go to a hidden line, which everything should be black and white, oh, people are not going to be happy with you. No. They're going to be real mad. They're going to say, why is this thing all in color? And why we print it to the color printer? And that stuff's invisible. It's not going to end well for you. And that's part of the problem with those step files. But as we've talked about, you'll notice as well in these files, as I move this family around, it doesn't have any intelligence. Let's go to one of mine. Right? This is my library. Notice as I move this around, you know what? It's not going to have that in 3D, but it will in the plan view. So I'll check both of them in the plan, but watch this in the plan view or in the elevation view. You're going to find that when I start moving this guy around, boom, see these alignments? See when I go here and I start scooting over, it's saying, oh, those two are aligned center to center. So if the one was a couch and one was a table, I can do that, right? Also, when you copy it down, you're going to find, you see the edges are aligning. And these edges are not the edges of this geometry, not the edges of all this garbage, but the edge of the width of that object. Okay, because I've put in those reference planes. Whereas, let's take a look. If we're over here and we look at the architectural plan, and we come in here and we say, oh, you know what, I'd like to get that to, oh, look, there was something. It will align the center, right? And it should align this center too.
It's so weird. Line disappear.
See the centers? The centers are catching, but this direction's not. Why? Well, that's because the person that you got importing these simple SketchUp files to try to cut the cost out of it is not sophisticated enough to know that what they really need. And you could tell them, and if you want, I'd be glad to train them. But what they need to do is they need to be drawing reference planes down the edges of this. These SketchUp files could be fixed, okay? They could be fixed. I don't recommend it. I think that that is going to go a long way down a path when you realize that you don't have the ability to adjust the length of this guy and the width of this guy or the materials of this guy. And that's where the problems come in. See, when I go into him, let's see, so we're in and we go here, you're going to see that this is all just a SketchUp file. No, let's see. Why is it not editing? Oh, it is editing. Why is it calling that a piece of furniture? Because this is your SketchUp translation. You can't convert that to anything else.
All of it was made in that software?
No, this is that's probably that SketchUp import. I'm in 26. Am I allowed to import not SketchUp, step, insert? Looks like the only thing you got is import CAD down here, file types, right there, STP. That's how it was brought in. And they give you these things telling you these work, but they're liars. They don't work. They don't allow any parametrics. And without the parametrics, you're really sort of missing the idea of them.
Yeah, they put Revit. Revit is about building information, not the building information. SAT or all the different.
Like I said, it's going to get real nasty when someone has to go try to change that table to be 6 inches narrower because that's what's been ordered and that's what's coming in. And they're going to be like, where the heck do I even get this file? How do I do it? What I'm trying to say we should provide for people is that ability to make that adjustment so that they, now, granted, there's a real benefit to possibly extracting all that information and getting that to the manufacturer to provide the proper size equipment. But if he can't get this table to fit in his room and he needs it 6 inches narrower, and what you're now asking him to do is go to the website to download a different file to get that file into here without getting it confused, I don't see it ending well for you. I think it's going to be a real bad process. Now, I don't mean to be that way. I don't mean to be harsh, but at the end of the day, these things, they're lying to you. I don't know how else to tell you. These things here, these are going to be so easy to build. Unfortunately, like I said, we can't do what they can do with step files, but if you actually notice, I'm zooming. What they did was not exactly a good thing. I can't even poke that many holes in an object inside of Revit. But I got news for you. I showed you my perforations. We don't need to poke that many holes. All we need to do is make some pretty simplistic objects, but it's not by a conversion process. What scares me is the day the per person has to export that one table 151 times for all the sizes that are available on the website. And what happens is the website only puts one of that table up there, and now you're in a position, I need this table to be smaller, but boss, we can't. And that's where you end up. So, hoping someone watches this. How long have I ranted? An hour and a half. I think that's a pretty good kickoff meeting. I'm hoping that if any of you call me, I'll tell you it's short enough you can watch. But I hope some of you got a couple of you guys watch it. Hopefully you'll join me this week and we can do something. And what I'd love to do is as well answer some of the questions that you guys have, some of the problems. If you have any problems with families, I'd also like to talk over the idea. My concept is we got to figure out a price that we can do these for that makes us enough money to make it worth our while, but doesn't scare a manufacturer or a contractor away from making the families. There's got to be a sweet spot. People need this stuff. They're wasting far too much time and they're not getting what they think they're getting. And I think we all know that. So hope you guys join me this week. Hopefully you didn't watch to the end of this rant. I'm going to call this a day, and hopefully a couple of the other nights we may go a little bit later. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you later. Remember, same stream. All you got to do is jump on. As soon as I'm on tomorrow, I'll be on.